Shalom, and welcome to Hebrew Bible Secrets with your host, Rabbi Beaton. We are reading today from the book of Acts, starting at chapter 6. Acts chapter 6, verse 1. 1. And in those days, when the number of disciples was growing, there arose Hellenists, complaining against the native Hebrews, because their widows were neglected in the daily distribution of food. 2. Then the 12 called the multitude of the disciples together, and said, It is no reason that we should leave the word of Elohim and serve tables. 3. Therefore, brothers, seek out among you 7 men of honest report, full of the Ruach, set apart spirit, and wisdom, whom we may appoint over this business. 4. But we will give ourselves continually to petition and to the service of the word. 5. And the saying pleased the whole multitude. And they chose Stephania, Stephen, a man full of faith and of the Ruach HaKadosh, set apart spirit, and Philip, and Prochorus, and Nicanor, and Timon, and Parmenas, and Nicholas, a proselyte of Antioch. 6. Whom they set before the emissaries, and when they had petitioned, they laid hands on them. 7. And the word of Elohim increased, and the number of disciples grew in Jerusalem greatly, and a great multitude of the Kohanim, temple priests, became obedient to the faith. 8. And Stephania, Stephen, full of faith and power, did great wonders and miracles among the people. 9. Then there arose certain of the Qahal, which is called the Qahal of the Libertines, and Cyrenians, and Alexandrians, and of them of Cilicia, and of Asia Minor, disputing with Stephania, Stephen. 10. And they were not able to resist the wisdom and the Ruach, set apart spirit, by which he spoke. 11. Then they secretly instigated some men, which said, We have heard him speak blasphemous words against Moshe, Moses, and against Elohim. 12. And they stirred up the people, and the elders, and the experts in the Torah, and came upon him, and seized him, and brought him to the Sanhedrin. 13. And set up false witnesses, which said, This man ceases not to speak against this set-apart place and the Torah. 14. For we have heard him say that this Yahushua of Nazareth shall destroy this place, and shall change the customs which Moshe, Musa, has handed to us. 15. And all that sat in the Sanhedrin, looking intently on him, saw his face as it had been the face of a messenger. So that now brings us to the end of Acts chapter 6. So let's go back and see any footnotes that are in Acts chapter 6. So the first footnote we have is in verse 1. And in those days, when the number of the disciples were growing, there arose Hellenists. Okay, so let's have a look at this. Hellenists. So we have here Greek-speaking Yahudim, or Greek-speaking Jews and Gentiles who had adopted much of the Greek culture. Okay? So Greek-speaking Yahudim and Gentiles who had adopted much of the Greek culture. Okay, so let's continue. We have another footnote, which is a continuation. Complaining against the native Hebrews because their widows were neglected in the daily distribution of food. So let's have a look at this. So we have here, the Hellenists are pagan and Hebrew converts who have assimilated into the nation's customs and are quite happy to remain in idolatry, mixing and adulterating Yahweh's word. Okay, so they were quite happy to remain in adultery mixing and adulterating Yahweh's word, which is obviously the Torah and the commandments. Okay, let's go to the next footnote, which is in verse 2. Then the 12 called the multitude of the disciples together and said, "It is no reason that we should leave the word of Elohim and serve tables." Okay, so let's have a look at this, serve tables. Okay, so we have here, they were like today's South Asian fellowships that thrive on food and are more concerned about food than the words of Yahweh. Many South Asians want to only read 5 hymns, finish the meeting quick in 40 minutes, and run off to the kitchen hall to eat their samosas and jalebis, which is a sweet dish, while the disciples were more concerned about teaching Torah and the prophets and the Tanakh. But as can be seen, the complaints came about food and not the lack of the word of Yahweh. In the synagogues, when the word of Yahweh was taught, Hebrew people would be there for at least 3 or 4 hours, listening intently, and during some festivals, they would spend all night in discussions and prayers, even fasting. This was a far cry from today's model of wham bam thank you man, in a 40-minute sermon, where people get nothing out of it and are left high and dry. Okay, so let's go to the next footnote, which is in verse 6. Whom they set before the emissaries, and when they had petitioned, they laid their hands on them. So let's have a look at this. So laying on of hands is an ancient biblical practice that finds its roots in the Torah, and it's not a new teaching. Okay, so this laying on of the hands is ancient biblical practice, or is an ancient biblical practice, and finds its roots in the Torah. Okay, so let's go to the next footnote, which is in verse 13. And set up false witnesses, which said, "This man ceases not to speak against this set-apart place." So let's have a look at this, the set-apart place. So the temple, note, all believers were Torah practitioners. Okay? So everybody in the temple at that time were practicing and keeping the Torah. Okay? Keeping the commandments. Okay, so that now brings us to the end of Acts chapter 6. So I thank you for watching and hope to see you on the other side. This is Rabbi Jeremy Beaton saying thank you for watching and shalom shalom. Baruch Shem Kivod Malkuto Le'olam Va'ed. Benevolent be the name of his esteemed kingdom, forever and ever and ever. Amen.